the qualified label. Many people find that to be the most confusing of all the labels. So, could you tell us about the green label and contrast that with the blue universal, the purple restored, and the conserved label?
The other three are pretty straightforward. Just to rehash, our blue universal label is means that the book is unrestored, free of any restoration or qualifying defects. The purple label is obviously the book has restoration on it, which can include color touch, glue, piece fill, cover cleaning, staples replaced, things like that. And then conserved is simply a subset of restoration that include only professional materials and techniques used on the book and slight in nature. So that's going to be minor things like spine split seals, tear seals, pieces reattached, staples cleaned or replaced, certain kind of cleanings, and then leaf casting courses. But the qualified grade, yeah, that one's a little confusing because that a lot of stuff has ended up in the qualified category, and there's various reasons why. So there's really three types of books that end up in qualified grades. One is defect related, one is printing error related, and then one is married parts. So the defects are kind of be broken down into three more different categories, which is going to be missing parts, detached parts, and writing. And writing actually refers specifically to signatures that are unverified by signature series. Many times over the years, people had books signed that were not witnessed by CGC. So they end up getting a qualified grade. Now, I'm harping on this particular aspect of qualified because this has gone away since CGC purchased JSA last year, and we've started to now we have that arm of our company that can authenticate signatures after the fact. And so now all those qualified grades that people have gotten over the years, those books can be resubmitted for the signature to be authenticated by JSA. And if it is, then the qualified label magically turns into a beautiful gold and black JSA label. So that's been a huge success because there's so many signed books out there. So as a result, we do not qualify for unverified SIGs anymore. Beyond that, you have detachments and missing parts. Missing parts is probably the thing that we qualify for the most these days. That's going to be parts missing from the interior of the book, not the cover, but the interior. So that could be a missing page, a missing wrap, a missing coupon, a missing panel, any part of the page that's missing that's large enough that affects the art or the story or even an ad page that will adversely affect the grade to a point where it's so low that we want to give it a qualified grade so we can preserve the grade of the book otherwise. A good example of that is, a beautiful book that's missing a page. We would, by our standards, give that a 0.5 universal grade, but that doesn't really represent the grade of the book. So a qualified grade would be assigned in that case, if it's above a certain threshold. If it's an 8.0, we give it a qualified 8.0 and say page 12 missing. And the detachments are the other thing that we qualify for. That's more rare, and that's going to be for mainly like detached centerfolds, detached covers, detached pages. Detached pages would be more of like your square bound books where your first or last page is loose. But otherwise high grade, or a cover that's fully detached, but otherwise high grade. Maybe one staple is detached. Now we've been more of a Bronze Age situation or a Copper Age where the book is high grade. But in all these cases, the book has to be a certain grade for us to qualify it. If it's a low grade book, if it's low enough, then we'll just give it the universal grade. So if the book's a 2.0, it's missing a page. Well, okay, a 2.0 to 0.5 is not that big of a drop, so we'll do that. But typically, like if it's 3.5 or higher, and it's missing a page, then or a coupon or something, we'll qualify that. But if it's something like a detached staple, then that's going to be like your nines. Because a detached staple will lower a book only to a 7.0. So if a book is a 9.4, all right, we'll consider qualifying it with a detached staple. But if it's a 6.0 with a detached staple, it has no bearing on grade. So that's one of the three reasons that we qualify the defects. The second one is going to be printing errors. Now, this one is definitely a lot more broad. We don't qualify as often for these because there has to be a pretty serious printing defect. A printing error, I'll call it, because there's a distinction there because printing defects we see all the time. I mean, that's like your bindery tears and your Marvel tears on the edge, or a little distribution ink or something very slight. But a printing error, which is actually like really affects the appearance of a book, is something we might qualify for. So examples of that would be like, yeah, so off register. Yeah, badly off register. A little off register, no big deal, but there's some that are just horribly off register, or a color's missing entirely. And so you got a book that doesn't even look like, what it's supposed to look like. Books that are badly miscut. Miscuts are common, say, during the golden age, but you've got some that look like a parallelogram. Other times there are books where the interior pages are printed out of order, backwards, upside down, or in rare occasion, it's not even the right interior. It's the interior from a completely different book. They're very rare. They're very few and far between when they're that extreme that we'll consider qualifying it. And then the third reason that we qualify for is married parts. So married part is like a part of a book that went missing and has been replaced by the same part but from another copy. The classic example is the cover. That's what we see the most often in the grading room is someone has a coverless Amazing Fantasy 15 and they found another cover and put that on the book. Another one is a Hulk 181 with the Marvel value stamp out of page 10. And so they'll actually disassemble the book and replace the wrap. That's a little bit trickier to spot. And it's also more commonplace because there's a lot more Hulk 181s to locate to marry parts to. So it's basically just a collector in the past or present who's just, trying to get a complete book. Now, in the other two categories, printing errors and defects, we have the option, and really the collector has the option of taking the universal grade or the qualified grade. You can go either way with it. But with married parts, it will always be qualified because the part's married. Now, on the flip side of that, a married part does not affect the grade like those other two do. So, if your cover's married, well, you're still going to get the grade of the book. It doesn't matter what grade it is, but the fact that the cover's married, that's not going to change. And so married parts always go into a qualified category. We used to put staples in qualified as well, replace staples or clean staples. We moved that into the conserved category because that's a good thing. If staples are usually replaced for good reasons, like because they're rusty, that's kind of more of a conservative approach we feel to the book. So we move that there. But of course, if tape is present, that's not allowed in conserved. And so if it's replaced staples with tape, we move it back to qualified. If conservation is present on a married book, then conserved category actually trumps the qualified. If it's like a lower grade Golden Age book, let's say, that has a married cover, but it has a big, split in the spine. Well, that's a good opportunity to seal the spine, possibly get a higher grade, and then get a conserved label, which, I personally like better. That would be the three categories for qualified, or the three reasons why we qualify.
In the last few years, has there been a book that's come by that had such an unusual sort of constellation of weirdness that you had to really think through how to categorize it?
That probably mostly comes up with printing errors, because they're usually anomalies that, sometimes we've never seen before. And we're like, do we qualify for this? Do we downgrade? Do we just make a note on the label? That's the toughest one because they're kind of an anomaly or maybe a one-off. There's really no precedent and there's really no determination of how the market's going to treat it or look at it. And so those are the toughest ones because we kind of have to make a judgment call right there in the moment. Say, does the market consider this to be extreme enough that it warrants a qualified grade, or even a downgrade for that matter? There's actually books that have a printing error, but they're not one-offs. They're like a subset of the print run where, you've got, a certain number of them. They're actually highly coveted by collectors. Those have presented a challenge in the past as well because we may have initially started to qualify those, but then because of, demand coming from the market over time for these books, we have to look at them differently and possibly even grade them differently. There have been a few instances where we've kind of changed our stance on how we grade certain books over time based on market demand. That dictates, what we put on the label in terms of our key comments, recognizing certain aspects and attributes of a book. Sometimes in the rare case, printing defects or something that really makes a book stand out, but in a cool way.
Yeah, is an example of that like Venom 1, where you've got the white cover?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, modern book. The market has gotten sophisticated to a point where people are now they're digging for, things that make a book stand out, or something that makes it rare, or something that differentiates it from other copies, like the 30-cent price variants and Swing with Scooter black and white ads in Batman, what is it? I think it's 181 or something, and the second prints. Yeah, it's another one. It's second and third prints. So somebody discovers that the fifth printing of whatever is ultra rare, and now the fifth printing is selling for, tons of money, way more than the first prints. And the whole concept of market values turned on its head compared to what, I knew from when I was young. It was always first prints are worth the most, and followed by second and third and fourth. And now it's like, no, it's like what is more rare? That rarity, certainly in the modern books, has become a huge driving force.
Speaking of rare, if you want to find out more about comic rarity, then check out this video, which I believe is the most comprehensive on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, my friends, and hope to see you around real soon.